in ArcGIS Online, of course, you can add your own data, but you can also add data to your online maps that other ArcGIS users have posted and made publicly available. So this video, you're going to find out how to find other people's layers, add those to your map, and how to change the symbology on a layer in ArcGIS Online so that you can classify and choose a symbology that works for you. In this example, we're going to be looking at a layer called California State Prisons Map, and I'm going to show you how to find that in ArcGIS Online and add it to your map, and then change the symbology around so that we can show the data in the way that's useful for your project. In this case, the prisons are shown by their location, and then the legend is that they are color coded a symbology according to the year that the prisons were opened. And so here you see that it looks more like a regular number, not a year. So you see 1852 is 1852, and that reason for that, just as a side note, is because that's how the person who owns this layer, the user who posted this layer to ArcGIS Online, just set up their attribute table in that way, and that's why it looks like that. But this is a map that shows prisons, and the colors correspond to the year that the prison opened. All right, so how do you get here? Let's open up a new map. All right, so from your account, you're going to click on Map, and that is on the navigation on the top after you sign into ArcGIS Online. You're going to look at Map, and it takes you to this page. And so we see the button here for Click Add. You're going to click Add here. And this drop-down menu, this is where you say Search for Layers. You have a few different options here. For this exercise, you're going to click Search for Layers, and this brings up a second search dialog box, and what you see here at the top is My Content. What you've got to do is change this My Content to ArcGIS Online. So go all the way down to the bottom, and we're searching ArcGIS Online. So what this means is, as you now should be familiar with how there are different privacy settings on everything you do in ArcGIS Online. By default, everything is set to private, that you are the only one that can see this. And that applies to any layer, any piece of data, any map, or anything that you make in ArcGIS Online. It can be private, or if you're working in an organization, have an organizational subscription, you can set it to be only visible to others within your organization. And then the final layer is the most open, and that is public, and that anybody with an internet connection can go in and see this. So what you're doing here is we're looking for a layer that somebody has set in their account to public. So they didn't actually go and post this piece of data. It's just that you've uploaded something to your account, and then they have set it to public. So they've set the layer to public. And when anything is set to public, especially a layer, then you can actually go into this search dialog box for ArcGIS Online when you go to add data, and you can add other people's data to your map. And you can change the symbology of it, and it'll look a certain way in your map. You might not be able to change the underlying data. So you might not be able to actually go and edit the attribute table or edit the locations of any features, but you can definitely put your own symbology to it. And that's what we're going to be doing right now. Okay, so you need to go in here and you type in California _state _prisons _map. So just like that, with the capitalized. So what we're doing is we're trying to find the particular layer that this other user has set as public on their account. That is, you can see the user is C API Publisher. I don't know who this is. It's just anybody with an ArcGIS account. If they've set this as public, that means that it's public and we can search for it. And so that's one of the nice things about ArcGIS Online, and it's also one of the things to be aware of, that if you do set anything of your own as public, other people can go and use it to make maps of their own. So once we have this, there's a couple of different things you can see. If you click on the name of the layer, we get a little bit of information, and there's a button here to add it to the map. In this case, we don't get very much information because the user has not put that into the item details page of this layer. You can also click the name of the user and you get the user profile of the person who owned this data. And so depending on how they set up their profile, you'll see more or less information. So let's go back. So we can click Add to Map here. You can also click this plus symbol here down at the bottom. And then before we move on, there's an updated 9/25/17. That means the last time anything was done by the owner of this layer. So we click Add. And you don't see anything, but usually we've got to close some dialog boxes. So we click here, and then we see some items on our map. And then I'm going to click back here. And then if we click on this icon for show contents of map, then we see that we've got our layer here, California State Prisons map. The next thing, I'm going to zoom in. And one thing to know that in ArcGIS Online, at least how it's currently done, is if you use your fingers to swipe up or down on the map, it doesn't zoom in like Google Maps. It actually moves the map around. So to zoom in, you will have to double click or use the plus or minus from the zoom option. Okay, we do have some symbology here already, and so we see some symbols here are different sizes, they're different colors, and that's because the owner of this layer has set that symbology as to be that. But what we want to do is we want to symbolize it in our own way. So I'm going to click back here on the contents, and what we're going to do next is look at the attribute table. So if you see this icon that says show table, I'm going to click here, and we see an attribute table that pops up. I'm going to expand this up a little bit so that we can see it, and we see the attributes here. The name of the prison, the address, a description. We've got the date opened here. And so this, you see it says 1989. It really means 1989, but the way that the owner of the layer set this up has the comma there. We have a few other attributes, but the one we are interested in for this example is the date opened. We want to show a map that differentiates our prisons based on when they opened. So we're going to close this by Xing that box. We're going to hover back over the layer name, and we're going to go to the our icon for change style. So symbology in GIS is, of course, in all cartography has some certain rules that we need to follow and some certain conventions. So we click on this change style, and the first thing we're going to do is, since this is a vector layer, you're going to find out which attribute you actually want to show. Sometimes we don't show an attribute if we just want to show the location of wherever that thing is. In this case, we do want to differentiate it based on the opening date. So we're going to click on this, choose an attribute to show, click date opened, and we see that the attributes all changed, and they're all different. Well, they're all different sizes, but the color is the same. And so that is a default symbology. And what we usually have to do in GIS, of course, if you've done GIS before, is you know that we usually change the default settings around to match what we actually are trying to do. You have a few different options here on the types of symbologies, and we're going to be using counts and amounts. Size is what's shown here. We are actually going to change this to counts and amounts color. So we're going to select this, and then we see they all changed color based on when the year was that they opened. But it's still a little hard to see, right? California's a big state, and those points are all kind of small. So let's click on options, and we also we've got to do some things with classifying our data. So we see that the default color scheme is this grade of coloration. It starts at this light color, and then it gradually moves up into a darker color. And in this case, we want to actually just classify those categories, the year that the prison's open. We just want to say that there's 3 categories here based on the time. And so we actually want to click this button here, classify data, and the default choice here is it's going to be using a natural breaks statistical method for breaking up the data. We're going to change this up a little bit. We want to break this up into 3 time periods. So in this case, in this particular example, we're going to change some things around. One of those is we're going to change this from 4 to 3 classes. We want 3 categories. So change that to 3. And then what you see here on the side of our color bar here, those little gray boxes that stick out, that is a frequency table. That means how many points are there on each one of those years. So we have back in 1852, there was one prison that opened. If we go a little bit later in the 1800s, you got one prison that opened. Okay, so that's what that means. If we look here, in more recent years, getting up towards the 1990s, you had in one year, it doesn't say which year that is, but in one particular year, there were 11 prisons that opened. So that's what those gray bars mean. The X with the line over it, that's the average. So the average year is 1971. And we want to change this, our lower category. You just click and drag, and we can set that at 1885. And so our first category of prisons will have this color, and those will be prisons that opened between 1852 and 1885. We're going to click and drag this slider up to 1980. All right, so our second category will be points that have this this color. These are going to be any prison that opened between 1885 and 1980. Of course, we don't really have any more until well into the 20th century, but that's what that category is going to mean. And then this last color, there's going to be prisons that are after 1980 up until 2005, which is when this data set provides us with data. All right, so if we click OK, this is going to save our information, and we still see that the points are kind of small. So let's go back in to the options. We're going to click options. We need to make those points a little bit bigger, don't we? So let's go up here to symbols, click on symbols, and we're going to change this size of the size up to size 24. So you can do that in a couple of ways. You can drag this slider, you can type in the number 24, or you can click those arrows to go up until 24. I'm going to click OK. And then we see that our map is a little bit better to make sense of. But we do see, let's look over San Francisco. That color is a little bit light compared to our base map and the ocean. So we need to add an outline to that circle. That's going to help us visualize that circle a little bit better. So we're going to go back into symbols. We're going to click on this outline tab here. We're going to click here on the black color swatch, and then go down here to our line width, and we're going to say instead of 0.5, we're going to change that to a 2 pixel line width. And so now we see that our circles are a little bit or actually a lot easier to differentiate from the background. We got to make sure you click OK, and then you're going to click done, and then we're there. Okay, so another thing, we should be labeling these points also. So let's label them with the year that they open. So if you click more options here on the right side, scroll down here to create labels. Our default is going to be the name of the prison, but we want to label this with the year. Let's label this with the date opened. We have a few options for doing the font. I'm going to click this box for halo because that gives it a little white outline around the date, the label there, and that's going to make it easy to read under that, with the background. All right, if we look back at our map, we see that, a lot of those labels are overlapping and we can't really tell what's going on. So let's change the visible range, because since a lot of these things are overlapping, let's change the zoom level at which that label will actually appear. So let's change this. We're going to zoom in, and we're going to play around here with some sliders here. So the black triangle here, that means the current map scale. The range here, we can move these sliders in and out, and that's going to be at what scales or what zoom levels are those labels going to be visible. And I'm going to leave the one on the right the same, but I don't want those labels to be visible when it's zoomed way out, because you see too many, it's too cluttered. So I'm going to slide this in. I'm going to click OK. I'm not going to click, I'm just going to let go, and you see that the labels disappear. And I keep zooming in, and they're not going to appear again until I get to the point where that little black triangle is in that zone where I've set to be visible. Okay, so we see something here, 1987 finally shows up for this point right here. You know, maybe we want it, maybe that's a little bit too close. So let's drag this out a little bit. And I'm going to zoom out until it disappears again. Okay, so that might be a little bit easier. So we're going to leave it at a zoom level like that. We do see a couple of overlaps here in some places, and there's some other ways to deal with that in ArcGIS Online, but we won't do that for this lesson. So just click OK. Next. And our map is almost good to go. We are not quite ready yet. One last thing to do is we've got to save the map, because if you've done all this work and if you close that window, then you're going to lose everything. So just like a lot of our Word documents and other things you work on, you've got to save. So I'm going to save as, and you're going to type in a name and save it. And in ArcGIS Online, you do have to add a tag, at least one tag on everything that you save. And so in this case, I'm just going to put in the word test just because I'm doing this for an example. But you can choose your own tag that's going to help you. You know, the name of the class that you're in, the name of the project that this relates to, anything that's going to help you. And you can add more than one also. You don't have to add a summary, but you can if you want to do that too. Click Save Map. And it's saved. We're not good to go yet, because look at this, folks. It looks like our map is kind of centered over Northern California. We don't see much of you won't see most of the state. And so we have to always remember that in ArcGIS, you always have to remember that in ArcGIS Online, the last place that you save that map in terms of the zoom level and where the map is centered, that's how that map is going to open. And so we always need to make sure that you zoom in or out to exactly where you want that map, how you want that map to look, and you want it centered in the place that you want it to be centered. If I scrolled it all the way over here to the right, that would not be a good map design. So part of our map design principles for the online GIS environment is that we do have to really remember to be careful about the zoom level and the map centering when you save it. So you just go up here, you click Save, and that saves it. You don't have to do Save As again. It's just, you're just saving any changes, and that is done. And so then we can look over on our legend, and we see that the color code, the color scheme, or the symbology of this map is according to the date open, and we have 3 date ranges: 1852 to 1885, 1885 to 1980, and then 1980 to 2005. Okay, so one other step is sometimes we are embedding this map into a story map. So what does that look like? So here's an example that we are going to embed this story, embed that web map here. And the way that our embedding process works is, I'll show you that here. So we're going to, let's say that you're in a story map and you need to embed it. You click that add content symbol that's right here, and you're going to embed. You're not going to click embed, you're going to click map. Okay, so then we're going to get to our map that you just made. You select that. And then we get to this another window where we can do some settings here. So we've got a couple things here. Down here at the bottom left, you'll see a button that says Edit Map in ArcGIS on Edit Map in ArcGIS. That's if you need to do anything to that underlying map in terms of the symbology, the data, all of the stuff that we just did. The fundamentals of that map you do in a web map. Here is where we're just dealing with the placement of the map inside the story map. We got a couple things here. We've got bookmarks. We're going to leave that alone. You are going to go to this gear right here for options, and we're going to put map navigation on, and we're going to also activate or turn on the legend. The other two options we can leave off in this case. And then we're going to place the map. Click Place Map, and we see it. We are going to have to fix a few things here, because you see that in our story map, it's first of all the things that when you place the map in your story map, there's also there's two things. One is the size, right, the placement of the map window on your story map, and the other one is the zoom level. So a lot of times we have to adjust the zoom level and the centering of the map again, and we can do that in the StoryMap. So the default here is that it's set at medium. Sometimes we like to put things on float because we can write some text here right next to it, but in this case we want to make that legend visible, and the legend is not so easy to see here. In fact, when we do it on float, we don't get a choice to show the legend. So we need to actually go in, and we're going to change this to just a small map. And then when we do that, you see down here on the corner of the map that we do have a pop-up for the legend. So we want to do it like that, so that the user of this can use the legend. The next thing we need to do is let's try to zoom this in a little bit more, because this is focused on the state of California, and so let's try to get this zoomed in. So let's go into our options. Options, this is where we put in alternative text. Actually, this is really important for accessibility issues, so it's good to type in a description of this map. And I'm going to type in web map of locations of California state prisons classified by year of opening. All right, so this is something that if you're working in in web design and web GIS, this is important for accessibility. So for vision impaired users of a website, they won't be able to see this thing, but their computer will know that something is there. And so we type this description in so that a screen reader on somebody's computer will know that, oh, this is a map of California with state prisons. But to edit our zoom level, we're going to click the pencil, go into edit, and here we actually we zoom in one more time. Sometimes you got to play around with this a little bit. So you click zoom in. We're going to zoom in one more level, and we see that, oh, that one at far north of California and the ones right at the far south are just out of view. But we're going to try to place this one more time and put that here, and we see that once again it is a little bit outside of where we'd like it to be. So let's click edit. We're going to play around with this a little bit. I'm going to click out a little bit. I'm going to try to center this map right in the middle. I'm going to click place one more time, and then we realize, well, maybe that's just where it needs to be for this project. So the zoom levels, they do jump, right? They do jump, and you're gonna have to play around a little bit sometimes to see, can I change this to make it a little bit better, or do I have to go back to the way I had it before? Of course, with the rest of your story map, you're going to end up publishing it and follow those steps that you learn in other lessons. And then you can also change the official description or the caption for this here by going in, doing this, and putting your caption in. So that's it. This is how we find a layer in ArcGIS Online that belongs to somebody else, add it to your own map, go in, change the symbology, classify the data in a different way so that you can put symbols in a way that is going to be useful for your project, save that map, and then embed that into a story map and adjust the settings once again so that it displays the way that you want it to display.